The last month has given us the wonder of exit interviews from President Bush and more recently Vice President Cheney. Bush stuck to the "I'm a nice man who loves my family and loves God" theme. Light on the details, heavy on the "aw, come on, you'd like me if you met me" stuff. The Vice President, on the other hand, he just doesn't care. Yeah, we waterboarded. You don't like it? Indict me. The Bush Legacy Project thus far gets across-the-board A's for audacity and a few F's for "what are you freaking talking about?" This weekend, though, the Revisionist History Unit broke out the heavy hitters, the two most popular Republicans currently drawing breath, Laura Bush and Condoleezza Rice. Their assignment? The extra heavy legacy lifting. They picked Mrs. Bush, for example, to try to shine up our memories of the administration's performance during Hurricane Katrina.
Oh, I feel terrible about Hurricane Katrina, and I'm sad that the response wasn't faster. The other thing that happened right after it was really not true reporting. The reporting ended up being not really factual, but many people heard the first reporting, and that's what they think happened, that 10,000 people died, or whatever the things were that were not true.
I feel a little awkward debating the First Lady about this, but if you're going to put her out there to talk policy and history, then we all get a chance to talk back. Madam First Lady, I don't think the fact that it was 1,800 deaths instead of 10,000 deaths in any way makes Americans feel better about Katrina and gross government incompetence, neglect, and negligence. We would not feel better about Katrina if the death toll hadn't been inaccurately estimated at first during the crisis. Really, trust me. As for Secretary of State Rice, the PR strategy was largely confined to the really long view of history. Here she is defending the Bush administration's foreign policy.
It's not a popularity contest. It is to lay a foundation for where this will all come out. I know that your business is to report today's headlines, and I respect that. But my business is to lay a foundation for history's judgment.
Guess we'll all have to wait till we're all long gone to know how it really went down. Rice did get specific in her interview with CBS, which took place a week ago. She offered particular praise for the Bush administration's work in the Middle East. I'm not mispronouncing that. It's not a typo in the teleprompter machine. According to an interview transcript from the State Department, Rice says this, quote, "We are leaving a negotiating forum where Palestinians and Israelis have said they have confidence that they will reach agreement, and decent Palestinian institutions of governance are going up. I think this is in much better shape than we found it." Days after she made that proud proclamation, of course, Hamas with the rockets into Israel and Israel with the bombs into Gaza, and now the expected ground incursion into Gaza. Yeah, very awkward. As for Iraq, Rice confirmed her words to Bob Woodward that she would liberate Iraq 1,000 times again. And asked about historians who rate George Bush as one of our worst presidents ever, Secretary Rice said they, quote, "aren't very good historians." Joining us now is Todd Purdum, the national editor at Vanity Fair magazine. His new story, a retrospective look at the Bush years with a lot of incredible on-the-record eyewitness insider quotes, appears in the magazine's February issue. Mr. Purdum, thanks for coming on the show tonight.
Thanks for having me, Rachel.
I know how I feel about the end of the Bush administration, just as a citizen, but you spoke to a lot of eyewitnesses, numerous former senior Bush administration officials, and their reactions were surprising. A lot of regret, a lot of, I guess, a sense of lost opportunity. Is that how it seemed to you?
Yeah, I do think there's a lot of regret. President Bush's former pollster and 2004 campaign strategist Matthew Dowd said the headline of this presidency would have to be missed opportunity. And, the segment you just had made me wonder what might have happened if President Bush had listened more and earlier and more often to Mrs. Bush and Secretary Rice. He might have gotten some better advice than the advice he initially got.
Dan Bartlett, in your article about Katrina, he says politically it was the final nail in the coffin. Matthew Dowd called it the tipping point. We are now hearing, strangely, from the First Lady spin that it maybe wasn't that bad as people initially thought that it was. Is there a consensus even on how Katrina should be discussed, if there were lessons learned from Katrina?
I think there's certainly a consensus that the whole system was broken, and both Matthew Dowd and to a lesser degree Dan Bartlett think that was partly because the Bush administration was already sort of too closed in its thinking about how it would react to crises like that. I know Matthew Dowd felt that there just was not enough effort to get the real ground truth to the president in a timely way. This has always been a president, whatever they say, who has resisted getting bad news from his advisors. He doesn't like to be contradicted. He doesn't like to have bad news. And I think it was very hard for them to sort of break through. You know, they'd been through so many crises. That's the other thing that emerges. He drew the most unlucky straw in terms of the sheer mass of events that happened between especially September of 2001 and 2005. But there's that, that doesn't solve the problem or excuse the managerial lapses, which were profound and severe.
I think that's maybe why where I come down. Maybe to not in the center of the American public on this issue, because I don't look at it as drawing short straws. I look at us as leaving us unwarned and unprotected on 9/11, completely blowing Katrina, and then invading Iraq without getting bin Laden. It all seems to be not stuff that happened to them, but stuff they screwed up. But even when they are being self-critical, they are still talking about this stuff as if it was just external events that they had no role in propagating.
Well, I think some people do have that view, but I think the more honest people, the people who have some distance on it, are quite harsh in saying the responsibility that the administration bears for its own troubles, the responsibility it bears for embarking on what was an elective war, basically, the responsibility it bears for not changing the tone in Washington, whatever they may feel about how the Democrats were behaving. I mean, Matthew Dowd told me, you can't. It's not like you're in Star Trek where some room makes your behavior change. You still have the power to rise above it if you're a good leader and you have the willpower to try to change it.
Let me ask you about one quote that jumped out at me. I think it'll jump out to a lot of people when they read the article in Vanity Fair. It was from Lawrence Wilkerson, and he was, of course, Chief of Staff to Secretary of State Colin Powell. He called President Bush a Sarah Palin-like president when he came into office. What did he mean by that?
Well, that struck me, too. I think it probably will strike a lot of people. I think what he meant was the consensus when President Bush came in was this would be a steady-as-she-goes leadership, and however untested he might be, he had the A-team of foreign policy experts around him. It would be the best foreign policy team maybe since, the Truman administration or something like that. And it obviously turned out to be not a team at all. It turned out to be totally dysfunctional. And President Bush, at some level, you can debate, how level, was not capable of mediating those disputes. He let the feud between the State Department and the Defense Department go on so long that some of the conservatives in the administration used to joke that John Bolton at the State Department amounted to the American interest section. And that kind of dysfunction should not be allowed in any government,
to say the least. Todd Purdum, national editor for Vanity Fair. Incredible sourcing on this article. Thanks for your work, and thanks for coming on the show tonight.
Thanks for having me.